Hello, good afternoon everyone, welcome. We've broken the back of the day, thank goodness. What am I doing? Hello, delighted to be back in Bristol. This is the third year that we've sponsored the Bristol conference and it's really pleasing to see faces that we recognise. Dan, brilliant presentation, thank you very much for that. It's going to come in really handy for ourselves earlier. Nice one. And it's really good to see some new faces as well. It's always fun to start a presentation with an apology. This is a momentous presentation for us today because we've presented these findings now in London, Manchester, and somewhere else that escapes me. And Bristol concludes kind of the first quarter of us sharing this piece of analysis. I promise you that's not in order of preference, it's simply a logistical piece around the dates that are scheduled. That does, however, mean that I need to apologise to Hannah and Catherine, who have seen a version of this presentation before and could probably do it better than I could give it justice to. But hopefully you'll find something new and exciting and engaging from our presentation. So what is our presentation? Well, we're going to be talking about the rules of attraction, which is the big fluffy title, quite clickbaity. Essentially, the value of our presentation, hopefully, is in the insight to help you hire. We really enjoy presenting at these occasions because what we're able to do is gather candidate insight very quickly from a large number and many demographics and present that back to you and hopefully be the voice of candidates to give us all some food for thought. Here are some feet. Attracting and retaining talent, and this is the bit where we do the blurb that sets the scene. We heard earlier about the fact that ONS figures suggest that unemployment is an all-time low, which is a good thing for the economy, but a really challenging area for us in terms of how we then reach individuals because talent pools have never been so difficult to access. We can then counterbalance that with the fact that in a piece of research that we ran right at the top of the year, 1 in 3 people suggest they suffer from Sunday night fear, which is fear of the working week ahead. And that happens as early as about 1, 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, which is incredible when you think that's a whole afternoon taken up of fearing for your working week ahead. And what's the solution to that? Very kind of roundabout, it might very well be a job that we love. So how can we present ourselves as jobs for individuals to love? So here is our insight. We have surveyed 4,000 UK workers and we've split that audience into two. So 2,000 of those individuals are read.co.uk users who we've surveyed after an application. So we might surmise that they are active job seekers in this instance. And then the further 2,000 respondents are an independent panel. So these are individuals who do not know that this is a read.co.uk survey because we just kind of wanted to understand what the differences are between read.co.uk active job seekers and those individuals who might not even be looking for work, perhaps they're kind of loosely passive job seekers. But we've amalgamated all those findings and where there are significant differences, we'll be able to pull them out and present them for you here. I think, thankfully for us, there isn't a huge amount of difference between those two audiences. So my job in the next 20 minutes or so is to take these 6 abstract concepts and present some insights and some percentages. If you've seen our presentations before, you'll know we're like a big percentage, and give you practical insight and some food for thought. So we'll start with the first rule, which is about giving people a fresh start. So this is a piece of research that we've run in some guys over the last 4 or 5 years now. And we use that to kind of set a benchmark, and we're able to report on any kind of change, any emerging trends. But we're also able to iterate on that kind of survey and present new questions. And amazingly for us, it's the first time we actually asked individuals, what's the motivation behind your job search? We'd never asked that. We always started off asking, where do you search for work? But why are people starting their search for work? We asked people what best describes the motivation for your job search, and it won't surprise anyone in this room that 41% of individuals told us that salary and an increase in salary was the key driver, and that just stands to reason, right, in that we're all looking for ways to fund our interests outside of work. We've got mortgages potentially, responsibilities, we've got families and whatnot, so that might not be new information to you, but I think what's really interesting for us is this point here. The second highest kind of cohort of respondents suggested a fresh start was what they were looking for. And I think this speaks to something that's much more an emotional trigger than salary is in regards to individuals are looking for an organisation to help them either invent their career, if it's the first time that they've looked for work, or perhaps reinvent their career if it's something that they're struggling with. If they're an individual that struggles with that Sunday night fear, they're looking for an organisation to help give them that fresh start to reinvent their career and reinvigorate their time at work. 27% of individuals suggested that they just simply want to see what's on the market, and they might not even look to necessarily apply for vacancies. I think this speaks to this point around unemployment is at an all-time low, so people understand that it is a candidate-driven market, and people just want to understand what their value is and what else is out there. So 3 interesting an interesting top 3 that tells a different story on each statistic. The next set of insights that we have for you is around being in the right place at the right time. And this covers maybe the media with which you choose to use. It might very well be the time of day in which people can expect to be looking for work. It might also be individuals who we can target to hit certain areas of talent, if you will. This statistic always makes me cringe because I know the inner cynic in all of us is suggesting that, yes, I'm up here as a job board suggesting to you guys that people told us they use a job board to go to first. And yet that is a great story for us. And I think moreover what we see is that actually we look at the traffic that comes to read.co.uk, the majority of that traffic comes through search engine. So I'll go back to this point around we split that audience in 2,000 read.co.uk users who you'd imagine there would be a bias in terms of they would suggest that because they know it's from read.co.uk, they're more likely to select this, right? And we understand that and we kind of use this as the caveat to introduce that. But what was interesting is the 2,000 from the independent panel actually indexed higher. So that number is brought down a little bit. And I guess what this speaks to is if you remove the read.co.uk part of why I'm here and just look at job boards in isolation, and we heard this morning a little bit, and we've all heard about the death of job boards, right? That's not something that's new to us. We know from user testing that what job boards allow is a big amount of original job content all in one place. So it's a convenience factor. And this is really important, and you'll see this drawn out in other threads throughout the rest of the research. It's all about convenience to the user, and I think having that original job content all housed in one place is the reason why job boards are still being used. Search engine traffic, again, won't be groundbreaking to a lot of us, and I think this just speaks to the fact that if we're not visible on search, then we're missing out on a huge size of our audience. 24% suggest they'll go directly to a company's website. And I think this is a really big, challenging area that we all have in terms of fighting for that real estate on that homepage. And hopefully this can be part of a business case, suggest that it's one of the main methods in which people search for vacancies. And finally, 23% just they do still use recruitment agencies. And I know recruitment agencies are often not thought of in the best light with this audience, and understandably so in a lot of cases. It's interesting that the demographic that indexes highly for recruitment agencies are those individuals that are a little bit more senior. So again, they understand their value to the market. So just looking for a recruitment agency to connect them with the best possible vacancies to allow them to maximize their salary potentially. So the roundabout story there is if you're a senior candidate, recruitment agencies may very well be the method in which you find work. So what time of day do people search? 22% suggest that while they're at work, they are then looking for their next career, which suggests that if you guys are all here, what are your people back in the office doing? I'm just scaremongering. Second, the people will do us the courtesy of at least waiting till we're on our break. 25% suggested that. And finally, and quite significantly, 48% said they'll wait till they're home from work in order to search work. And I think for me, what's really interesting, I talked a little bit about the trends that we've seen year on year. 2 years ago, the two most selected options were when I first wake up and last thing before I go to sleep. And that was quite significant, and it suggested that the search for work can take over our lives almost. If it's the first thing you think about and the last thing you think about before you go to sleep, right? We're seeing a move and a shift away from that, which I think is a positive thing because we're freeing up some of our own time back for what we enjoy thinking about, because we know that job searching is a particularly sensitive time for individuals. Career influences. This was a really interesting question that we asked 18 to 21-year-olds only, and this is a respondent group of around 500 individuals from 18 to 21-year-olds. We asked them of the following peer groups, who's most likely to influence your job search? 45% said parents, and then quite a big step down to close friends, teachers, peers, and siblings. Now, this is a really weird statistic for us to present back to you, and I think the roundabout conclusion when we spoke to our own people team about this, what's the practical advice here? It might very well be that if we're looking to engage with a younger audience, that we open up our offices to open days for parents and young people alike to come into the office and see the inner workings, because certainly this would suggest that parents are a really powerful influencer group. And if you can get them on board, then perhaps you'll win really where there's really big challenges for younger talent, perhaps we can use parents to help overcome that. 56% of individuals suggested that they'll apply for jobs on mobile rather than on laptop and desktop. And again, I don't think we're shifting the needle with a statistic like this. You'll be aware of the rise and the increase in mobile and the fact that year on year, this is only heading in one direction. And again, if our recruitment experiences aren't optimized for mobile, we're going to be missing out on a key segment of our audience. The next section is all around candidates being customers too. I think this speaks to, and we've heard a lot about candidate experience. This all speaks to the expectations of job seekers today match very closely with their expectations of consumer brands. And there's some quite startling numbers in here, I think. I think no number paints the picture of why this is the case more than this, which is that 73% agree that a negative experience during a hiring process will impact how they view our products and services. So this suggests that it's not just an impact on the recruitment function, it's an impact on the entirety of our businesses. How does that work out? What are the practical steps that they would take? Well, 38% suggested they'll share their negative experience with family and friends. Of course, it's never been easier to do so using mobile and social. 33%, quite stunningly for us, suggested they will not use your products and services again. So if we're delivering a negative recruitment experience to individuals, they simply won't be our customers anymore. And 33%, around a third, is not an insignificant number. And 32% just simply won't apply again. So we won't be able to re-engage with these individuals. If they're not right for this role, they might be right for something else. If we deliver a negative experience, we'll lose those from our talent pipelines. They'll start to look elsewhere. So what are the expectations of today's job seeker? Well, 75% suggest they expect confirmation of application, with 39% suggesting they expect that to happen quite quickly. And I think that is achievable, and there are lots of providers in the room today that will be able to talk a little bit more about automation, helping us out with that. But I think this speaks to getting value back from that job searching process, in that people want to understand and they want a receipt of the fact that they've made the effort to reach out, and they just want to know that that's been received and move on to the next stage of their job search. 78% suggested that they expect to be informed even if they're unsuccessful. And I think there's something very human and understandable about that we don't ever want to deliver bad news to individuals. But I think this speaks to the point around individuals now just want closure. If they're not suitable, and if we're able to deliver that in a way that isn't damaging, actually you're providing closure from the time that's been spent applying for your vacancy and allowing people to free their time and efforts up into applying elsewhere. And I think if we don't do that, then that will lead to a negative job experience, a negative job searching experience. So I guess hopefully this statistic helps remove that barrier of delivering bad news if you should so feel that way. If no contact has been made, in 5 days, 25% assume they've been unsuccessful. And after 2 weeks, you'll lose the majority of those individuals who have applied for your vacancy. They'll have just moved on and put their efforts elsewhere. And again, I don't think we're saying anything groundbreaking, particularly in this statistic. This is quite startling for us. 73% of our survey respondents suggest that they expect to be interviewed within a fortnight of having made an application, with a huge 91% expect to be offered that job within 3 weeks. Now, for us, that's a huge disconnect between the expectations of candidates and what we're able to deliver. And I think, again, this speaks to the heightening demand of job seekers expecting recruitment functions to act the same as a consumer brand. It's very much a case of if we want something from an Amazon, we're able to order it and it's at our door within a couple of days, maybe even less if you're that way inclined. But I think how we can address this is setting those expectations out as early on in the recruitment process as we're able to. And that might be with our messaging, and perhaps that's our messaging that sits on our career site, or it might very well be part of automated messaging that we deliver on receipt of an application. If we're able to set the expectations early on, we're able to deliver on those expectations, because at the moment, if we leave individuals kind of to their own devices, these numbers have only gone up in terms of the demand to be seen and in work has never been greater. So quite a startling number for us. This next section is around celebrating inclusivity, and the last two presentations that we had were brilliant, and they've given us all the practical insight that matches up with this section. And it's interesting that we've all talked about dismissing this notion of, we all know that inclusivity and diversity is important, and getting rid of this notion that it's just simply a box-ticking exercise. Here we have the expectations of what candidates want to see from businesses that they're applying to. 73% of our survey respondents suggested that what a company does to improve diversity and minority recruitment is important. So it's just simply becoming an expectation of your audience. So what do they expect? What are the practical steps? And again, we had some brilliant examples already. They expect a commitment to workforce diversity, and that might very well come from your business leaders. It might come from a message of you as an organisation, but it's important to articulate that. They want to see a diverse workforce represented in promotional materials and anywhere else too. I would encourage you all to openly talk about any hiring programs. It shouldn't be something we keep behind closed doors. It's important to be able to feed that information back through to our hiring audience. And finally, any activity that you partake in that targets diverse candidates, again, we encourage you to share that with your audience, because it's becoming the expectation in terms of where individuals want to work. Younger respondents agree with that sentiment more, significantly more than any other age range. So again, if you're looking to hire emerging talent, as it's been called, or young people, this stuff is really important. 25% of our survey respondents suggested to us that they have felt discriminated at in some stage in their search for work. And again, I've said startling statistic quite a lot. This one really hit home for us, and our next intention for our research project is to uncover why this is and what are the practical steps that we can take to overcome this. And I'm very grateful to the two examples we had from Catherine and Dan earlier that I think spoke to kind of dispel a lot of this. But it's a big number that we want to see come down. We need to better understand why that is and how we can get around that. The next point, as articulated by a microphone, why not, is talking about shouting about your success. And we can do that in 3 areas. We can talk about our commercial success, we can talk about people's success within our own organisation, and we can talk about a commitment to CSR. So why is it important to talk about commercial success? Because often it's kind of seen as a big grandiose pat on the back and something that we've often shied away from because it can be quite cringeworthy. But a third of the individuals we surveyed consider your organisational financial health and stability as part of that job searching experience. They will take some time to research how your business is performing. And in fact, when we delved into this a little bit further, it can be a deciding factor on choosing between 2 identical job offers. Why is that the case? It's linked quite closely with the perception of brands that are well known. It's all talking about the point around job security. So 39% of individuals associate recognised brands with job security. So if you're a recognised brand, you've already kind of got that feeling, you're projecting that. But if you're a successful business and you're able to articulate your growth year on year and show that you're heading in a positive direction, it lends this to this idea of people are joining an organisation which is succeeding, and they will have security as part of that. So perhaps if you're not fortunate to have a brand that is immediately recognised, even more reason why we should be talking about our business performance, and it's not just this kind of self-grandising pat on the back as suggested. People's success is really important because when we look at people's application priorities, so moving away from how they search for work and what they look for into what motivates you from just searching to applying, the first thing people want to do is see an articulation of company culture. Now, it's really easy for me to stand up here and say company culture, and thankfully there are many more experts around the room that are able to help you articulate that. But it's really important that, I guess, in the first instance, we understand what image we want to project of our company culture. And it's not just about an image thing, right? It's about, do we actually believe in that? Is that a true representation of our company culture? And I think the first way we can do that is by looking inwards. But as I said, there's many more experts that will be able to delve into that a lot more detail than I can. People want to see career development, and people want to see instances where we've provided learning opportunities to our people. And that's really interesting for us. And again, I think that speaks to people thinking over and above their careers and what they're interested in outside of work. And I think one of the quick wins that we might take from this, in terms of being able to articulate career development and learning opportunities, is to use people from within our own business as authentic voices, as advocates for instances where that's been the case. So if you've got people within your own business that have started at a junior level and worked their way up, then are we using them to project the sense of career development and learning opportunities that we give to our people? Here's an example of CSR from Deloitte, and we're all familiar with Deloitte, and I think it's a really challenging one because Deloitte have a huge, significant budget, and they empower each of their local branches to reach out to their local communities and look for areas where they can do more, deliver something over and above what they do in their day-to-day. I'm really grateful for Dan's presentation. I'm bigging you up quite a lot here, Dan, which is a good thing, right? It doesn't have to cost huge sums of money. I think the key benefit that Deloitte saw is that it was by empowering their branches to reach out to their local communities and then articulating that back to their audience, saw them gain significantly. Because again, if we think about that younger audience, they want to work for organisations that are seen as giving back. So it's really powerful, and again, it's not just a box-ticking exercise. And perhaps there are ways that we can do so that don't include huge, massive, big budgets. Final section of our presentation, disco ball. People love perks, and this is a really interesting one for us because there's a lot of conjecture around this, and it was really interesting. Just on lunch, we were talking about particular perks, so I'll be interested to get your feedback on this. The 3 big expected themes from the individuals that we surveyed, they want to see perks that speak directly to work-life balance. So whether that's the ability to be able to work from home, whether that's flexible working hours. It's a key theme that repeats itself, and again, that's perhaps that's not something new to us. Healthcare and pensions was a real surprise for us, because I think there's a perception that this is a bit old hat and that people have moved on, they're not considering their longer term futures. Well, that's simply not the case, and that was quite a good realisation for us to have, and showed that our thinking was backwards, just in the marketing team at read.co.uk. But there is a bit more of a long-term play here, so don't forget about it just because it isn't kind of big. I want to say the word sexy, but I don't think that should apply for healthcare and pensions, but there we go, I've used it. And finally, any perk that speaks to happiness and well-being is really important. So those are the kind of the big, fluffy areas that we should look to address as part of our perks and benefits, potentially. Now this bit's the bit that kind of creates conversation. What are the office amenities that people expect to see? Now I'm simply the messenger here, so please don't shoot. Free fruit regularly, birthday day off. It sounds a bit like Price is Right. Free tea and coffee. Yoga sessions was represented quite highly, which was a strange one for us. People would like a gym membership if you're able to offer it. A quiet workspace. To be seen, I think, a quiet workspace to be in and amongst this group is something that feels like a quick win. And I wouldn't necessarily have even seen as a perk, but more increasingly people are seeing it as such. And finally, and perhaps most controversially, duvet days. How we all feel about them, I don't know. And then sleep pods. I personally can't think of anything worse than trying to have a nap at work. But there are lots of industries where that's a really big, key, significant driver. So please don't let that be the takeaway that you take from this 20 minutes, is that read.co.uk are telling you all to introduce sleep pods at work. That's not our intention. But just an interesting smattering of perks, big and small. So in summary, if we think about those 6 kind of abstract concepts, giving people a fresh start speaks to the motivations behind people's careers, their search for a new career, sorry. Yes, people do want as big a salary as they're likely to be offered. But moreover, what we're seeing is this trend for people wanting to invent or reinvent their career. And we shouldn't forget that we're giving people a new opportunity for a fresh start. Being in the right place at the right time is really important, considering the media you choose, when you decide to advertise, and perhaps the influencer groups that we might be in touch with. Candidates are customers too, and this is recognising that there's a big disparity between what candidates expect and what we as recruitment teams are potentially able to deliver, but understanding that the expectation is more aligned now for the recruitment process to be that of a consumer brand. We should celebrate our inclusivity. If there are activities that we're partaking in, if there are campaigns that we're running, we should be sharing them with our audience, because our audience more increasingly is expecting that. We should shout about our success, whether it's business performance that we perhaps might have been cautious to share previously. It's really important and entrenched in job security. Perhaps it's around our commitment to developing our people and providing learning opportunities over and above our day-to-day responsibilities. And CSR, any commitment that we have to CSR and giving back is really important, particularly for a younger audience. And finally, people love perks. Thinking about those big key 3 expected themes. And it'd be quite interesting maybe to take some time at some point today and share the best perks that we find in our offices too. Because I think in an area that's so challenging to find the right people, how do we get a competitive edge? I think an innovative use of rewards and perks might very well give us an edge over our competitors, some of whom may even be in this room. That sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? Thank you all very much for your attention, really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.